Welcome everyone to our webinar on cybersecurity in the supply chain. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to join us, and we'll start in about 3 or 4 minutes. While we're all waiting for all our attendees to join us, let me put in a plug for the ARC annual forum in Orlando this February. It is actually our 30th annual ARC forum, and there will be themes of AI, cybersecurity, the energy transition, sustainability. I urge everyone to go to arcweb.com and look at our events there and join us for the forum in the first week of February. Additionally, on ArcWeb, you could see our other forums that are held around the world during the year in Barcelona, in Asia, and other places around the globe. Okay, it's a few minutes after the hour. Let's get started today. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on supply chain cybersecurity. In the next half an hour, we'll discuss how modern connectivity has expanded both opportunity and exposure across every industry. This presentation really is for senior leaders. Our focus today is on decisions that strengthen resilience without adding complexity. We'll examine how threat actors now exploit trusted relationships, where control gaps occur, and which governance steps deliver measurable improvements. By the end, we all should have a clear view of the top priorities for stabilizing your environment, the metrics that prove progress, and next actions to take. So let's jump ahead and get started. Here's how we'll spend the next 30 minutes. We'll begin with an overview of the challenge, then move through sections that build from awareness to execution. The early topics, threats, vulnerabilities, and governance, set context and structure. The middle sections, vendor oversight, identity and compliance, translate policy into daily practice. And we'll close with incident response, real-world case studies, and a phased roadmap you can apply immediately. Each segment ends with concrete takeaways you can adapt to your own organization. Keep an eye out for actions that feel both practical and high impact. Those are your best starting points. Before diving into specific threats, we need a shared understanding of the environment we're defending. Supply chains are no longer linear. They're digital ecosystems built on constant data exchange. Every integration, cloud service, and remote connection changes your risk profile. This introduction frames why supply chain security has become a board-level concern and how leadership attention directly improves outcomes. We'll define the problem, outline expectations for today's discussion, and prepare to look deeper at how attackers now view these same networks as an opportunity. Supply chain security is now central to business continuity. Digital transformation, as we know, creates interdependence and that shared exposure. Leadership attention determines our outcomes. So thus, let's clarify where risks originate and how to manage them and prepare to examine modern threat trends. So, supply chains once followed clear boundaries. Today, they function as interdependent networks. Every new partner, API, or shared platform expands capability, but also extends exposure. Security can't rely on a single perimeter. It must span all participants who handle your data or systems. The challenge is consistency. Each organization manages risk differently, and assumptions create blind spots. Effective programs focus on visibility, defined standards, and mutual verification. By treating partners as extensions of your own environment and requiring proof, not promises, you turn a complex web of relationships into a manageable ecosystem. No company operates alone. Data and processes flow continuously across suppliers, platforms, and customers. That efficiency means a single weak link can trigger widespread impact. Attackers exploit this reality by focusing on smaller vendors with lighter defenses, using them as entry points into larger networks. Consequences reach far beyond technical recovery. Contracts, reputations, and regulatory standing are all effective. True resilience requires joint responsibility. Everyone touching critical systems must follow consistent standards and provide evidence of compliance. Security across the chain is only as strong as its least managed connection. Our objectives today are straightforward. First, glean a clear picture of how supply chain attacks have evolved. Second, surface the operational gaps we see most often. Issues like missing inventories, weak access controls, and delayed patching. Third, outline governance practices that ensure policies translate into action. Fourth, define a structured approach to vendor oversight that balances trust and verification. Finally, walk through a phased roadmap so you can sequence improvements realistically. Each objective connects to a tangible outcome that you can measure in quarterly and annual reviews. The threat landscape, understanding modern attack patterns. Now we'll look at how adversaries operate in today's environment. Attacks have shifted from isolated breaches to systemic campaigns that exploit shared services and software. Threat actors, ranging from nation states to organized criminal groups, target the connective tissue between organizations. By understanding these patterns, you can prioritize controls that disrupt them. Stronger visibility can be turned into dependencies, faster patching, and continuous verification of trusted components. Let's review exactly what these attacks look like in practice. Attackers no longer focus solely on individual organizations. They aim for suppliers and service providers whose compromise grants access to hundreds of downstream clients. This shift turns isolated incidents into systemic risk events. Defenders must therefore think beyond their own perimeter, mapping dependencies, monitoring shared tools, and assessing upstream and downstream exposure. Risk assessments should include not just internal assets, but critical vendors and platforms. Visibility across this extended network allows earlier detection and coordinated response when issues do arise. The expansion of cloud services and remote operations has erased clear borders. Employees, contractors, and vendors now connect from everywhere, often through APIs that exchange sensitive data automatically. Each integration increases the number of paths attackers can probe. Nation-states can use these routes for strategic disruption. Criminal groups use them for scalable profit. Recognizing this reality means shifting investment towards identity controls, configuration management, and partner oversight. You can't eliminate the connections, but you can ensure each one is intentional, secured, and monitored. There are some well-known incidents that highlight recurring themes. In the SolarWinds and Kaseya, trusted software became a delivery mechanism for attackers. MoveIt and Log4j showed how vulnerabilities in widely used components can ripple across industries. And Target demonstrated how a small vendor account could open a major retailer's network. Each case reinforces three distinct points. Trust must be verified, dependency mapping is essential, and monitoring has to extend into third-party activity. Studying these breaches helps prioritize investments that close the same pathways in your own organizational environment. Common vulnerabilities. Now that we've seen how attackers think, let's turn a bit inwards to where defenses often falter. Most incidents don't result from exotic zero days. They stem from basic oversights, missing inventories, weak access rules, outdated software, and unclear accountability. These are recurring patterns across industries. They're not glamorous, but they do represent the majority of exploited conditions. This section lays out the most common gaps, why they remain, and what can be done, both practically and systematically, to close them. The theme here is consistency. Good security isn't built on a one-time audit. It's built on habits enforced daily across people, processes, and tools. The same weaknesses appear again and again across industries. Many organizations don't have an accurate record of what assets they own, let alone what vendors have access to them. User accounts often carry permissions far beyond what's necessary, increasing the blast radius when credentials are in fact stolen. Patching remains inconsistent. Critical updates can wait weeks, months, or even years. Vendor oversight is often limited to contract signing with little ongoing validation. And finally, security monitoring tends to focus internally, leaving third-party activity unseen. The good news here is that these are all solvable problems. They just require sustained attention and clear ownership. You can't secure what you can't see. Visibility gaps are the root cause of most other weaknesses. Many organizations operate with partial asset lists, especially when cloud instances, remote endpoints, or third-party integrations change frequently. Dependencies, both software and vendor relationships, are rarely mapped in detail, leaving teams unaware of indirect exposures. This shadow IT compounds the issue as departments add tools outside governance. The solution, again, is ongoing discovery, not a static spreadsheet. Use automated scanning, integrate procurement data, and tie inventories to configuration management so visibility stays current and actionable. Access control is where convenience often overrides caution. Shared credentials, delayed rotation, and inconsistent multi-factor enforcement remain very common. Over time, employees and vendors accumulate privileges they no longer need. This builds unnecessary and dangerous pathways into critical systems. Monitoring tends to focus on successful logins, not unusual patterns like off-hours activity or logins from unfamiliar locations. The fix is governance, not just tools. Enforce least privileges, set automated reviews for dormant rights, and require MFA universally. Strong authentication and precise permissions reduce risk dramatically without slowing legitimate work. Unpatched systems remain one of the most preventable causes of breaches. The challenge isn't awareness, it's execution. Teams juggle competing priorities and fear disruption from updates. Without risk-based prioritization, critical patches compete with cosmetic ones. Responsibilities may be split across IT, OT, and cloud providers, leading to gaps. Effective programs centralize visibility, rank vulnerabilities by exploitability, and assign clear owners. Testing and rollback plans build confidence to deploy faster. And don't forget third-party tools. Vendors should confirm their own patch timelines, and you should verify compliance when updates are in fact released. Governance. We've covered the common gaps. Now let's talk a little bit about closing them through structure and accountability. Governance is how strategies become habits. It defines who owns the decision, how results are measured, and when to escalate issues. Without it, even good teams drift into reactive firefighting, let's call it. This section explores how to embed supply chain security into standard business management practices. Think of it as aligning security with operations, clear roles, defined metrics, and regular reporting that turns intent into measurable progress. Awareness is necessary, but accountability, in fact, drives change. Every security domain needs a named owner, someone with the authority and expectation to act. Measurable KPIs translate broad goals into trackable outcomes, such as the number of vendors assessed, time to patch, percentage with MFA. Integrating metrics such as these into existing business reviews keeps security visible alongside financial and operational results. Tying this progress to leadership objectives ensures attention stays consistent. Governance isn't static. It too evolves as threats and operations do. This continuous improvement loop keeps controls aligned with the reality on the ground. Strong governance begins with visible leadership. An executive sponsor ensures the program has strategic weight, while a dedicated lead coordinates the daily activity. A cross-functional council spanning security, procurement, legal, and operations often breaks down those silos. Decision rights must be explicit so teams know when to act and when to escalate and when to leave alone. Integrate supply chain risks into enterprise risk management to maintain their priority. Quarterly reviews create a rhythm, confirming progress, removing obstacles, and adjusting focus as business conditions evolve. Thus, governance isn't about more meetings, it's about predictable, trackable oversight. Policies and standards. Policies set expectations. Standards make them practical. Referencing established frameworks avoids reinventing the wheel and provides external credibility. Vendor tiering ensures effort aligns with risk-critical partners with risk. Critical partners face stricter evidence requirements than low-impact suppliers. Define baseline controls and specify how exceptions are requested and approved. Transparency is key. Everyone involved in procurement or vendor management should understand these standards. When expectations are clear, assessments become faster Audits are smoother and accountability is easier to enforce. Governance in action. Governance must be visible to matter. Dashboards with KPIs show progress at a glance. Time to patch, MFA coverage, vendor assessment completion, for example. Scorecards can translate these technical measures into simple red, yellow, green status by vendor or control area. Regular reporting to leadership reinforces alignment with those risk appetite statements. When these metrics fall short, you can publish remediation plans with assigned owners and their due dates. Over time, all of this builds a culture where supply chain security is managed with the same rigor as financial controls: transparent, measurable, and continuously refined. Vendor risk management. Every organization depends on third parties: cloud providers, logistics firms, software vendors, and service partners. Each one brings capability and risk. Vendor risk management is about balancing trust with verification. It's not enough to review contracts once and move on. You need a structured life cycle that begins before procurement and continues until offboarding. This section covers due diligence, ongoing oversight, and ways to hold partners accountable without creating bottlenecks. The most effective programs focus on clarity, clear expectations, clear evidence requirements, and clear consequences for noncompliance. Vendor risk programs often fail when they rely on paperwork instead of proof. Trust but verify is useful only if verification is continuous. Start by tiering your vendors. The more critical the service, the deeper your oversight. Request real evidence, security certifications, penetration test summaries, or audit results, not just self-attestations. Verification isn't a one-and-done process. Revisit it quarterly or annually, or after major changes. Monitor actual performance, uptime, incident response, and compliance with SLAs. Finally, write accountability into contracts so expectations carry legal weight. This approach builds a cycle of transparency rather than a checklist exercise. Think of vendor management as a life cycle, not a transaction. Before signing, assess the risks: financial, operational, and cybersecurity. Include security clauses in RFPs so bidders know expectations right up front. And during onboarding, validate that promised controls are in fact in place and align them with your own internal standards. As this work continues, monitor the metrics and require updates when conditions change. And when relationships end, remove their access, retrieve the data, and verify secure disposal. Treat offboarding as seriously as onboarding. And following this life cycle thus ensures control at every phase and prevents loose ends that turn into exposures. Due diligence essentials. Due diligence is where informed decisions begin. A vendor's financial health and reputation often predict reliability under pressure. Independent certifications and audit reports provide assurance that controls exist, but read them very carefully. Scope and date matter. Ask about subcontractors. Risk, of course, extends through every layer of the chain. Review how vendors handle, store, and protect your data, especially in multi-tenant environments. Finally, confirm that their incident response aligns with yours, particularly in regards to timing, notifications, and cooperation. All of that must be pre-agreed. This disciplined review process prevents surprises when issues do, in fact, as they undoubtedly will, arise. Contracts are the backbone of accountability. Every agreement should include clear language on security obligations, data protection, and breach notification. Timelines for reporting incidents must be explicit. Vague terms lead to delays. Right to audit provisions allow independent verification when needed, and recognize standards like ISO 27001 or SOC2 can anchor expectations. Finally, include termination rights if vendors fail to meet critical requirements. These clauses protect both sides by setting mutual expectations before issues occur, reducing confusion and friction later. And then once a vendor is onboarded, risk, of course, doesn't stand still. Continuous monitoring bridges the gap between annual reviews. External rating tools can provide useful signals, but should complement, not replace, your direct oversight. You can track those metrics quarterly or even monthly, integrating them into dashboards alongside internal KPIs. When incidents do occur or services evolve, you can do reassessments to capture that new exposure. Combining that automated data with regular conversations maintains the context for all. Continuous monitoring turns that vendor management from a point-in-time audit, as we talked about earlier, into a living process that reflects the reality of the shared operational world we live in. Identity, access, and data security. So with vendors and internal users alike, access remains the most critical control surface. Identity really is the new perimeter. Data is the core asset. This section outlines how to ensure the right people have the right access for the right reasons, and nothing more. We'll look at identity governance, privilege management, and the data protections that limit damage even if accounts are compromised. The guiding principle here is precision. Every access path should be intentional, monitored, and revocable. Every security plan centers on two questions: who has access and to what? Identity governance answers the first, defining who can request, approve, and review permissions. Least privilege ensures users only see what they need, cutting the attack surface. MFA, of course, prevents stolen passwords from granting entry. Data classification tells you which information demands extra protection. And finally, encryption in transit and at rest is paired with activity monitoring. All of that together ensures that data stays secure even when the credentials fail. Managing identity and data together provides that layered defense that's built for today's distributed networks. Centralization in regards to identity management essentials. Centralization simplifies control. A single sign-on consolidates credentials and improves oversight. Multi-factor authorization is mandatory across all accounts, internal, vendor, and administrative. This automation reduces errors by provisioning and removing access as roles change. Regular reviews catch privilege creep and confirm least privilege. Behavioral analytics add another layer, detecting suspicious usage patterns that might signal a compromise. All of these combined are measures that make identity not just a login mechanism, but a continuous assurance process that scales with your environment. Protecting data begins with understanding its value. Classification assigns sensitivity levels, guiding which safeguards apply. Encryption ensures intercepted data remains unreadable. Data loss prevention tools monitor sharing and block unauthorized transfers. Third parties handling your data should meet equal or greater standards. And you really should verify this through audits or contractual evidence. Finally, it's wise to establish clear disposal procedures for end-of-life data, ensuring deletion from backups and vendor systems. A disciplined approach such as this protects your information throughout its life cycle, not just at storage points. compliance and legal obligations. Compliance is more than a checkbox. It's a baseline that proves your program operates with discipline. Regulations and frameworks now shape security strategy across virtually every industry. Whether you're mapping to NIST 800-161, ISO 27001, or sector-specific mandates, the goal is alignment and evidence. This section focuses on establishing traceability, knowing what requirements apply, how your controls satisfy them, and where the gaps remain. When done correctly, compliance reduces ambiguity, speeds your audits, and reinforces trust with partners and regulators alike. It's not the finish line, but it's the structure that keeps your operations defensible. In a regulatory inquiry or post-incident review, intent isn't enough. You must show proof. Documentation demonstrates that security decisions were made consciously, based on policy and risk. Maintain those audit trails for activities like access reviews, patch cycles, and vendor assessments. Keep evidence that oversight did in fact occur, such as meeting notes, emails, and dashboards showing compliance rates. Risk acceptance should be logged with rationale and sign-off, showing thoughtful trade-offs. Finally, track improvements over time. Regulators do in fact look favorably on organizations that can prove they learn from findings and do in fact act on them. This documentation just doesn't protect your reputation, it validates governance maturity. So as we said, most industries now operate under overlapping frameworks. NIST 800-161 provides a comprehensive approach to supply chain risk management. ISO 27001 sets global standards for information security governance. Defense contractors follow CMMC, which formalizes maturity levels. Privacy laws like GDPR and CCPA define how personal data is handled, while agencies like the SEC and FTC in the US impose disclosure obligations for incidents. You don't need to comply with every framework, but you should align with those most relevant to your sector. Harmonizing these controls across frameworks avoids duplication and simplifies your audits. Demonstrating compliance. Demonstration matters just as much as execution. Begin by mapping existing controls to applicable frameworks. This shows coverage and reveals gaps. Where possible, automate your evidence collection through your tooling stack. Manual screenshots are not good. They age quickly. Conduct internal readiness assessments before your formal audits so you can catch deficiencies early. Independent audits performed periodically can go a long way in building credibility with both customers and regulators. It's important to summarize all these findings for leadership, focusing on risk implications rather than technical jargon and buzzwords. The goal here isn't perfection, but it's transparency, knowing where you stand and proving steady progress towards full alignment. Legal considerations. Legal oversight should be proactive and certainly not reactive. Counsel helps translate regulatory language into actionable policy. Notification timelines differ by jurisdiction. Define them upfront to avoid noncompliance. Data location and ownership clauses affect jurisdictional exposure, especially in cross-border supply chains. Indemnification and liability terms clarify who bears the cost when things do in fact go wrong. And during incidents, engage legal teams immediately to preserve privileges and coordinate communications. Aligning security and legal perspectives ensures your technical actions hold up under both legal scrutiny and contractual expectations. the path forward, and a roadmap. Even mature programs experience incidents. What separates resilient organizations is speed, clarity, and control under pressure. This section focuses on structured responses, predefined roles, practiced communication, and continuity plans that keep operations moving. Let's cover how to integrate vendors into your response model, how to communicate effectively across internal and external stakeholders, and how to recover while learning from the event. A good response plan turns this chaos into arguably choreography. So no organization responds in isolation anymore. Incidents often cross company boundaries, making coordination essential. Bring your key vendors into your response planning. Share expectations and contract protocols ahead of time. Identify escalation paths and decision makers on both sides. Notification requirements should align so information flows quickly without duplication. Conduct joint tabletop exercises to practice this cooperation before the real event occurs. The goal here is muscle memory. When disruption hits, every participant should know their role, and then communication should flow almost seamlessly. The core elements of incident response. This follows a disciplined sequence. First, you'll detect anomalies and confirm incidents through triage. Next, contain the threat. Limit the movement and protect critical systems. Analyze root causes while maintaining the evidence. Then eradicate that malicious code or the access, and then remediate whatever weaknesses were exploited. Recovery restores systems under controlled conditions with validation to confirm that clean operation. Finally, conduct a post-incident review to capture lessons and update your playbook. Consistency and predictability in this process reduces confusion and builds confidence across technical and the executive team. Communication shapes perception as much as containment shapes the outcome. Internal teams need timely, factual updates. External audiences require measured disclosure. Pre-approved templates save time when clarity matters most. Regulatory and contractual obligations dictate when and how to notify third parties. You really should plan these workflows in advance. Involve legal and public relations early to align accuracy and tone. And keep thorough records of every message sent. They may be required in audits or in litigation. A calm, transparent, predictable approach sustains trust even in a crisis. Continuity ensures the business keeps running when technology stumbles. Start by identifying mission-critical processes and the systems that support them. Build redundancy, alternate providers, mirrored data, or manual workarounds for high-impact areas. Regularly test restoration steps to confirm they work under real-life conditions. Prioritize recovery efforts based on operational importance, not just technical order. And after each event, revisit your assumptions and adjust your plans. The objective here is true resilience, the ability to absorb disruption, maintain essential operations, and return stronger after every test. Case studies and lessons learned. Theory only goes so far. Nothing clarifies strategy like real events. This section examines high-impact breaches that reshaped how we think about supply chain security. Let's look at what went wrong, what went right, and how these lessons apply. Each case highlights common threads, missed visibility, weak verification, and slow response coordination. So let's jump in and take a look. When reviewing these major incidents, First, focus less on the headline and more on the chain of decisions that led there. Technology very often works as designed. It's the human and process layers that break down. Identify the recurring issues: delayed patching, vendor blind spots, fragmented ownership, for example. Then translate those insights into specific actions, like revising onboarding checklists or expanding monitoring scope. Institutionalize learning by documenting and sharing findings so lessons don't fade with turnover. And treat every event, whether internal or external, as a free audit that reveals where your maturity must grow. So, the SolarWinds breach. It remains one of the defining supply chain compromises of the last 10 years or so. Attackers targeted the build process itself, inserting malicious code into legitimate updates. Because the software was signed and trusted, customers installed it without question. Detection took months, and by then the attackers had moved laterally across networks. The key lesson here? Trust is not verification. Even approved vendors and signed code require independent monitoring and behavioral analytics. This incident spurred executive orders and new frameworks, underscoring that supply chain security is national security. Target's breach is different. It showed how a small vendor can open a massive door. Attackers compromised credentials from an HVAC provider, then pivoted into the internal systems. Weak segmentation allowed movement from maintenance networks to payment data. Alerts fired, but were overlooked among the high volume of alerts. The result was one of retail's largest breaches and a reminder that operational vendors are part of your security perimeter. Limiting vendor access, tightening those network boundaries, and tuning alerts for actionability could have broken this chain. Thus, our lesson learned is that oversight must extend beyond IT suppliers to every integrated partner on the network. And MOVEit demonstrated how a single unknown vulnerability can cascade through a global network. The exploited flaw existed in a common file transfer tool embedded across industries. Many affected organizations didn't even realize they were running it until after disclosure. The event underscored the need for a software bill of materials, SBOMs, to know exactly what's inside your stack. Without this dependency visibility, patching becomes truly guesswork. This case shows that even well-managed environments inherit risk from upstream code, reinforcing the need for continuous inventory and supplier communication. Log4j. This revealed how deeply embedded open source components are in enterprise systems. The vulnerability was trivial to exploit and present across thousands of products. The hardest part wasn't the patching, it was finding where the library lived. Discovery spanned weeks, exposing how few organizations maintain accurate dependency maps. The lesson of this one is very clear. Open source software requires the same governance as commercial tools. Maintain that SBOM, track updates, and assign ownership for third-party code. Visibility across all layers of your software supply chain is now essential, not optional. Finally, roadmap and next steps. We've examined risks, controls, and real-world lessons. Now let's translate them into an actionable roadmap. Improvement doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in phases. Stabilize, strengthen, and sustain. This last section outlines how to prioritize your efforts, build momentum, and measure progress. Whether your program is new or mature, this framework keeps focus on the fundamentals while scaling maturity over time. Security, as we've described, is a journey. A roadmap ensures each step builds upon each other in an incremental way towards resilience and is instead of, say, scattered activities. So building a practical roadmap. A roadmap provides order to complexity. Start by sequencing those actions across 3 clear phases, each building on the last. Early, easy wins, like full MFA enforcement or completing an asset inventory, builds credibility and momentum in your organization. Assign ownership to ensure accountability. Progress rarely happens without a name being attached to an initiative. Then align your milestones with broader planning cycles so cybersecurity improvements support your greater business goals. Finally, measure results in terms of risk reduction and resilience, not sheer volume of activity. A few well-chosen steps executed consistently outperform very often a long list of incomplete, scattered initiatives. So first, phase 1, stabilize. The stabilization phase lays the groundwork. Visibility comes first. Know what assets and vendors exist in your particular environment. Multi-factor authorization and least privilege reduce easy entry points. Patch high-severity vulnerabilities to close known doors. Network segmentation contains potential breaches, limiting lateral movement through your system. Finally, document your incident response plan so roles and communication paths are defined before a crisis occurs. This phase focuses on the fundamentals: clarity, control, and readiness. Without this base, your advanced measures won't have maximum impact. Phase 2, strengthen. With basics in place, shift toward structure. Formal governance assigns clear responsibility and decision rights. A vendor risk lifecycle introduces consistency. Risk assessment, onboarding, monitoring, and offboarding all follow very defined steps. Broaden monitoring to include behavioral analytics and automated alerts. Then align your control framework to NIST or ISO standards for external credibility. Then, parallel to the technology, invest in your people. Training embeds security awareness into their daily routines. This strengthened phase is about repeatability, building processes that operate smoothly without constant interventions. Phase 3, sustaining progress. This requires embedding it into your normal operations. Automate those repetitive tasks like patch verification and access reviews to maintain consistency. Conduct joint exercises with vendors to ensure response coordination extends beyond your walls. Benchmark annually to measure improvements and identify drift. Integrate security metrics into enterprise dashboards so this performance stays visible to your senior leadership. And finally, revisit that roadmap quarterly. Adapt to your changing threats, technologies, and business priorities. This sustained maturity comes from treating security as continuous management, not episodic projects. So next steps. To turn today's insights into results, begin with prioritization. Target actions that reduce the greatest risk with available resources. Assign ownership so accountability is clear. Set 90-day goals. These short cycles maintain focus and deliver quick, visible wins. Communicate your progress across teams to reinforce alignment and recognize their efforts. And then finally, reassess quarterly. Conditions do evolve, and so must your strategy. These organizations that do in fact succeed aren't those with the largest and grandest plans. They're the ones that execute repeatably, consistently. The ones that learn from their outcomes and adjust with an eye towards that discipline. So let's distill our session today into a few core principles. First, visibility enables control. assets, vendor, and dependency inventories are your foundation. Governance converts strategy into practice. Without defined owners and metrics, even the best plans drift. Remember, too, that vendors are part of your network. Oversight and verification must match their criticality. Protect identities and data as your crown jewels. They're the entry keys and the target. And finally, resilience isn't built alone. It's shaped through partnerships, preparation, and consistent follow-through. These are the habits that separate organizations that endure from those that react. Thank you for your attention and thoughtful engagement today. Remember, cybersecurity isn't just a technical challenge, it's a leadership responsibility rooted in governance, clarity, and accountability. The most successful programs advance step by step, maintaining momentum through small, measurable wins. Each and every improvement, no matter how small, compounds towards that resilience. Please use today's insights to focus your next quarter, to track your progress openly, and to keep communication flowing across teams and your external partners. Now let's open the floor to any questions we may have, and we'll conclude our webinar for the day. Let's see if there are any questions come in the Q&A. Seeing how I don't see any questions in the Q&A, I will thank everyone again for joining us today, and I will see you next month for another supply chain webinar on the subject of the impact of energy in the supply chain. Thank you very much for joining today. And once again, don't forget to join us for the ARC 30th Annual Forum in Orlando, Florida, the first week of February. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again on our next webinar.